Bore da pawb. Hello, everyone. And thank you very much for having me here today. I'm really happy to be here, so diolch yn fawr I chi. So we had a little hitch, so you're going to have to look at it like this because we can't get it to display any better than this. So sorry about that, but that's what we've got. So my name's Zoe Munn. My pronouns are she, her. And I work as a freelance independent producer and programmer. I work with a lot of different companies of different scale and put on work of different scale. But today I'm going to talk about two of the festivals that I work with in Wales, one of which is Green Man Festival, and the other is Eisteddfod Genedlaethol, the National Eisteddfod of Wales. So Green Man, first of all, is a greenfield festival based in the Banau Brycheiniog, the National Park in Mid Wales. And I'm going to just hopefully play this video to give you a bit of an idea of what it is. Fingers crossed, yes.
All goatee, girls like that. I never smiling, my girls like that. A dirty ass knees, my girls like that. I love my girls like that. I love my girls like that. I never dancing, I love my girls like that. I never in pink, I love my girls like that. I lay it on thick, my girls like that. I love my girls like that. I love my girls like that. Don't wanna see or hear nobody else, so all that she needs is her hand and herself. Pretty and clean, I want my girls like that. Dirty and clean, I want my girls like that. Nice and mean, I want my girls like that. I love my girls like that. I love my girls like that. Really don't care, I want my girls like that. Swing your both ways, I want my girls like that. Complicated, I want my girls like that. I love my girls like that. I love my girls like that. Let me know when it all falls down. Introduce you to my awful sounds. Keep it jaded when she's not around. I'm kicking ass so you can't sit down. Don't wanna see or hear nobody else, so she couldn't care if you ended your life. Girls like that.
Okay, so I should have said that one of the reasons I wanted to talk about these two festivals is because, for me, one is a kind of contemporary festival that is embracing the traditional, and the other is a traditional festival that is embracing the contemporary. And, you know, you can make up your own mind about that, but that was my starting point. So at Green Man, as you can see, it's kind of very much a music festival in the kind of Glastonbury Festival style of things. Although we're fiercely independent, we don't take any sponsorship, we don't have any, Live Nation have no shares. I just run the performing arts, so I've got a little stage called the Back of Beyond stage, where the programme's mainly funded through Arts Council Wales, so we work quite strongly within their priorities. We showcase Welsh work, we work with Welsh artists to develop their work, and we're trying to develop more international connections. I can't see you at all, and I've got my glasses on, and it's a bit weird. Yes, so some of the different ways that we program work, we commission, we co-commission, and we present work that's already existing as well. So this is a show called Soon by Collective Flight Circus. They're a collective of female dancers and aerialists that are based in West Wales and Pembrokeshire. And their work is around female traditions of unity, but also of working the land. They're all growers. So they're influenced by the changing of the seasons and some of the traditional movement and behaviours of women in their areas. They're currently working with the collective in Glasgow to further develop the work and are very keen to come to Ireland as well. But that's not a piece of work that we commissioned, but we have presented it, and we're trying to work with them to further that work. This is another example of work that we have commissioned. We're part of a collective called the Four Nations Outdoor Arts Bursary Award. So we commission new work and emerging artists, and our partners are Spree in Waterford, Surge Festival in Glasgow, and this year BD Festival in Bradford as part of Bradford City of Culture. And this was a piece of work called Tidal by Ophelia Belugan and Kim Noble, and that was a celebration of ancestry and female lineage, looking at their Welsh, Norman and Yoruba roots to find common ground within mythology and cosmology that they translate through their bodies and dance. So it's quite an interesting piece of work that looked at all of their heritage and collective heritage. And what I find with this kind of work, this was actually, the piece of work in the end was a very much contemporary dance. To me, it looked like contemporary dance. And to our audiences, it looked like contemporary dance. But it's not something that our audiences at Green Man would necessarily have gone to a theatre to watch. So what I find really important with the work that we're doing is that it's outdoors, and the festival's not free to attend, but once you're there, you might just come across it. So people are taking their kids, they might be 4 years old, they might never take them inside a theatre to watch dance, they might never make that decision to engage with it, but because it's on an outdoor stage in the middle of a festival where come Sunday afternoon, they're probably sick of trudging around trying to watch music, they might just sit down in front of our stage and see what's happening. And that way they can engage with things that they might not normally engage with, and the children in particular will sit there and just be mystified by it, whereas the parents might have been scared of taking them inside a building to do that, which is why, for me, working in outdoor arts is really important, because of those chance encounters and those abilities to reach out to audiences that you might not otherwise reach. So we also commission walkabout work. These are some walkabout characters by Edie Morris, which were originally commissioned for a music video by the Welsh band Melyn Melyn. So she brought them back to life and brought them out into the field. They were originally inspired by Welsh mythology, but also Scandinavian and Norse mythology, and basically ran around the festival scaring the life out of people and traumatizing children. But she's a great maker. They're I love these because they have those echoes, don't they, of, where did you see them? Which mythology was it that you saw them in? Some of them are quite universal. We've also worked a lot at Green Man with Oshamelia, who's here in the room and can talk about their work far better and more eloquently than I will be able to. So I would encourage you to have that chat directly, and May's on a panel this afternoon as well. So this is a piece of work called Querin, which has become one of Wales's greatest cultural exports in the last few years, and is still touring and off to Japan in a week or so. This, to correct me if I say something wrong now about your work, but was a fusion of traditional Welsh folk dance with embracing contemporary queer nightclub culture. And was originally commissioned through the Wales Outdoor Arts Consortium, which was underpinned by Articulture, which is the outdoor arts network for Wales, and then went on to tour as a three-hander. It's a very beautiful piece of work. And then expanded later on to 7 dancers and 1 musician. And part of that, we collaborated. Green Man were one of the kind of supporters of that. Arts Council Wales funded it, but the Eisteddfod were another supporter. I can't remember who else you had now. Years ago. But yeah, so that was, this kind of work just really hits really well with our audiences at Green Man. Our audiences are not particularly a Welsh audience. There's a lot of people come from the southeast of England. They do it as a holiday. I call them Guardian readers from Brighton. They're great people, but they really embrace having that connection with, I don't want to call it traditional dance, but but this kind of content really resonates, and it's very interesting to see, how that works and what they're actually switched on by. So this is the next piece of May's work that we again co-commissioned with the Eisteddfod and also with Meitheal, which are the kind of network for Welsh learners in Wales that put on a number of different events in different places as well. This is called Meitheal, and embraces the tradition in Wales of the Meitheal, which is a tradition where a horse's skull is taken from is dressed up and taken from house to house to welcome in the Welsh New Year. People have to, traditionally it riddles someone on the door, you have to have a big fight of riddles, and then everybody gets drunk. So this is touring at the moment. And the other thing that we do at Green Man is we commission a one-off kind of evening show every year. We've worked with a number of different groups of performers to do that. It usually has some kind of circus element, because I like to keep the stage as a circus/dance stage. So this year we've invited May to expand Meitheal to a nighttime version with circus performers in it. Whether we'll still be friends by the end of the summer remains to be seen. So we're looking forward to seeing what that turns into. So that's a little snapshot, really, of Green Man and what we do there. And then moving on to the Eisteddfod. So the National Eisteddfod is the National Welsh Language Festival, and it's a travelling festival which goes to a new site in Wales every year, which is an absolute nightmare for the production team, because obviously they can never benefit from learning from the mistakes of the site that they were on previously. It's always a big hoo-ha. The area that it goes to raises money for it to go there. Money comes from lots of different places, but that's one of the places it comes from. And obviously bringing the Eisteddfod to a place brings focus and, economy and all the things that festivals bring. But it's been running for 850 years and has many, many traditions involved with it. The only language that can be used in the Eisteddfod for anything public-facing is Welsh. So, a panel discussion down to a show, whatever it might be, has to be in Welsh if it's on the main Maes, which is the field, means the field. No other language can be presented to the public. That wasn't always the case. I think that was brought in the 1960s, the Welsh language rule, because there was a concern for the Welsh language actually getting filtered out slightly at the Eisteddfod. But it's still quite recently been fairly rigid in how things have been done. There's many competitions across creative disciplines, visual arts, choirs, traditional dance, recitation, poetry, and the highest accolade that can be won is the chair, the poet that wins the chair. So traditionally, the Eisteddfod looks like this. Young people, traditional dance, and it also looks like this. It's very much known for the Druids, which, again, don't go back in history to all time, although obviously Druidic practices themselves do. But there's a kind of bit of an in-house. People joke about the Druids, even though they're also very well respected. So there's a lot of pomp and ceremony. The Gorsedd Circle opens. The Gorsedd Circle there's literally a stone circle put up everywhere the Eisteddfod goes. They used to put a new stone circle in every town, but now they've got a kind of quite modern plastic circle that gets taken around and put up on the Maes, because you can't just keep putting stones up on every farmer's land. But there is always a stone circle nearby, and if there isn't one, then they will put one. But most places have got one by now. And so during the Eisteddfod, the Gorsedd Circle is officially opened, and you can only join the Gorsedd, which is kind of like an order of people who generally have either done a degree through you have to be elected to go onto it, but it's a sort of higher group of people who have done some service to the language. So they may have done a degree through the language, through the medium of Welsh, or they may have done a music degree, and there's different kind of levels of it, but it's all very kind of ceremonial and a little bit weird and a little bit traditional, and kind of the Eisteddfod has been known, particularly in Wales, for this sort of slightly stuffy, you know, Druidic strangeness. But over the last 10 years, that narrative's really been changing, and the Eisteddfod now looks much more like this. So this is the Vaughan and Mice, which is the outdoor stage, the outdoor music stage. And since a lot more things have moved outdoors, there's been more outdoor performance programming, more walkabout, more additional tents. The site now looks much more like what you might consider to be a festival site in the mainstream. It's kind of had a real kind of resurgence of energy in a way. I think some of the old guard have kind of moved on. There's changes been allowed to happen, which people kind of really resisted for a long time. And very importantly, we've got the kind of the Mice B, which is the young people's area. So the Eisteddfod looks like this. So it's kind of gone from there to there, which is a very different kind of energy, isn't it? And Mice B is again, it's Welsh language music, but it's Welsh language music by and for young people. There's a lot of youth bands. There's a big scene around it, and it's very exciting. And people are really driven by it, and young people are really driven by it. And we like to think that even outside of Wales, it's had an effect. My colleague in the Eisteddfod said that I should read you the quote from Kneecap. And the chap says, and I'm not trying to take the credit now because I know they've been in the Oscars, but before we formed Kneecap about 7 or 8 years ago, I went to the Eisteddfod. I remember going to Mice-B where they were playing electronic music, and I think it's amazing to see the young people who connect so much with their language through modern music. So that's the quote. But yeah, it's really actually quite amazing to see the ownership, because people have gone to the Eisteddfod all their lives, you know, like we were saying last night, May, weren't we, that you've only missed one in all your life. People go every year. It's owned by the Welsh-speaking communities of Wales, you know. So it's really important that the Eisteddfod reflects who those people are and what they want to do, you know. So after the pandemic, there was a 2-year hiatus, and when the Eisteddfod decided to come back, we talked about doing some sort of spectacle, something a bit more, something that they hadn't had before. And my background is contemporary circus, so you know, we talked a lot about that. We'd done at the time we'd run a circus village in South Wales with a lot of the circus companies based in Wales. And one of the things that had come up was that there wasn't really, what's the word, a lexicon, a language for circus in Welsh, because the words didn't exist. And in circus, quite often you use French words anyway, or, you know, a lot of the terminologies haven't necessarily even translated into English. And we got talking about that, and when Sioned, who's the assistant, what is her title? Assistant director, I think, deputy director, she basically books all the acts. We had a long night of going, oh, what could we do? Let's do something. And we thought, oh, let's do an outdoor circus show. So because we didn't have budget to make a new one from scratch, we kind of hijacked an existing show. And that was a show by Guerrilla Circus called Unity. And they worked very closely with spoken word. And that seemed very appropriate for the Eisteddfod because it's very, you know, poetry is such a big part of it. So we worked on, we recast the show with some Welsh performers, and this was in 2022. And we called it Dadeni. It was kind of following on in the years before the pandemic. There'd been a big carnival one year at the Eisteddfod when they were in Cardiff, working with Cardiff's docks communities. And that was called Carnival and More. And then actually in 2019, there was a collaboration with Fidget Feet from Ireland, came over and made a show inside the pavilion. The pavilion's like the main building there for the Eisteddfod, called the Tulwth. So there'd sort of been a bit of a movement towards circus and parade style stuff. So we created a show with a poet called Cassie Wynn. See if that'll play.
Cwestiwn gwenall sy'n dal I hel llwch, paham rhoddais di ni'r tristwch hwn, ar boen fel pwysau plwm ar gnawd a gwaed, fy iaith am gwyl ar ein hysgwyddau megis bwn, a'i thraddodiadau'n llual am fy mhraed.
so she was talking about coming back to the Eisteddfod after the pandemic and what that meant to her, and sort of sometimes feeling stifled by it, but also feeling really excited by the new things that she saw and the energy of the youth and all of that. It was quite a provocative piece of writing that she read out, but the management were happy with it, and that was great. It was really, so it kind of really made a statement of, the Eisteddfod's back. We want to do stuff that's of scale. There's not a lot of work of scale in Wales, where we're quite a small country with only so many funds, and it's something that I know the Arts Council are trying to address at the moment. So the following year, we went on, the Eisteddfod was in the Llyn and Vaughan area, so we were looking for something to do that was related to that and related to a story there. And Tan and Llyn is a famous event that happened. Tan and Llyn means fire in the Llyn. So basically, in 1936, there was an RAF bombing school that was built at Penyberth near Pwllheli on the Llyn Peninsula, which had been basically turned down by about 4 locations in England. Nobody wanted this bombing school to be on their doorstep. So they built it on the Llyn, really, with no kind of consultation. It was a Royal Air Force base. So there was quite a lot of opposition to that, partly because there'd been no consultation and partly because it was a bombing school and people really didn't want to get on board with that. So there was a controversial event where 3 men, Saunders Lewis, David John Williams and Lewis Valentine, went and set fire to the bombing school, which was basically a shed, because most of an RAF base is just a runway on the floor, isn't it? But it was a strong gesture, and it became. Saunders Lewis went on to become a founder of Plaid Cymru, the National Party of Wales, and so it became a kind of symbol of Welsh independence, and we really wanted to kind of refer to that, but without making a political stance as such. So obviously the fire on the Llyn, there's a song, it's a story that everybody knows. We thought, let's do something with fire, but we also thought, let's do something about peace, because, actually they were peacemakers, and part of that protest was about protesting for peace and not wanting to engage with RAF bombing. So we started looking around. We worked with a company called Ann Now, who are fire creation specialists, and when we started to research it, we came across a quote which some of you might know by Gustav Mahler, who's a Austrian composer in the late 20th century, which is tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. And we found that really resonated with everybody. So we translated that into Welsh, and it's these kind of things that they're carrying behind. This was the opening procession, which was quite a small procession through the site, and the first weekend, because the Eisteddfod goes on for 8 days. We carried those, and then And Now made this huge circular installation, like a sculptural installation made out of local materials, with a crowia, which is a traditional slate fence around the edge of it. And that was a space for reflection. People came in the day, they drank tea, they talked about peace, they talked about what that meant to them. We had hosts that started those conversations, and they wrote messages of peace and hung them on pieces of slate and hung them around as the week went on. We also commissioned these 3 heads of the chaps: Saunders Lewis, DJ Williams and Lewis Valentine. This is by an artist called Ben Mason, who specialises in sort of these big satirical heads. And they were a walkabout on the mice. And what was interesting about them is that lots of kids were obviously fascinated by them and coming up to them, but they didn't necessarily, the young kids didn't necessarily know the story. So you had a situation where the parents were explaining to the kids who these people were. And it was quite, we hadn't really anticipated that. So it was really interesting to see these stories kept alive and how people actually told them what their version of that story was, or how it had been taught to them, And then we commissioned an artist called Ossian Griffith to do some postcards which were given out in the reflection space. These are all to do with the Women's Peace Mission So we tied it in with the Women's Peace Pilgrimage, which took place in May and June of 1926, and the 100th year anniversary of the Women's Peace Petition to America, which involved, in 1923, which involved the women of Wales literally walking the length of Wales, collecting signatures against the war and taking them to America, presenting them there. So that was a really nice thing to be able to kind of weave in. And this was the finale. Okay, I won't be long. I've got 2 more slides. Sorry, once I get going. So this was the finale. This was, as you can see, is a huge fiery finale. We had a procession. We had words, music. We had poet Yasin Tyne, musician Sam Humphreys, actor Miriam Fleur, and groups of local performers and children involved in that. So it was it was an 8-day project. Nearly killed me. Absolutely amazing, but wove in lots and lots of the different aspects of this. And this year we're working with Surt Bijou from Bristol to come in and upskill some of our aspiring directors, producers and performers, and we're working around a text by Iswyn Flock Ellis called Wythnos yn Gymru Ffydd, which is about the future. He goes into the future and finds different futures. One's dystopian, one's wonderful. Again, it became a piece of propaganda for Welsh independence, but we've kind of repositioned it to celebrate 10 years of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is an act which underpins all Welsh policy making now, which is about handing on the world to our future generations in a state that we want it to be, basically. So coming to the end of that, we continue to work with the Eisteddfod. Next year, 2026 marks 850 years since the first Eisteddfod, held in the Tyvi Valley area in Cardigan Castle. This is the chair in Cardigan Castle. So next year, the Eisteddfod will be in northern Pembrokeshire, which will allow us to link Cardigan Castle in some way or journey, even though it's technically not in the area. And we're looking to hopefully bring actually more traditional elements, more possibly traditional dance elements into that. And make some sort of big spectacle with horses and boats and so on. Watch this space for that. Sorry, I've talked too long, haven't I? But yeah, that was, so I just wanted to reflect really on those 2 festivals because they're both quite major festivals in Wales and they both have a very different context, but are co-commissioning work together and some of the work that's in this room today. So thank you.